And we're back. I have a huge smile on my face because this is one of those episodes that I've been really looking forward to for quite some time, and we finally got it scheduled. And this is one that I think is going to be very informative. Get ready to take notes and refer back to this because we're going to be talking about molecular hydrogen today. And I have on the show with me Mr. Tywon Hubbard. He is one of the world's leading experts in all things molecular hydrogen and so much more. But I want to give you a quick background on who Mr. Hubbard is so that you can continue listening, knowing that this person knows what the hell he's talking about. And hopefully this can be something that encourages you to understand more about molecular hydrogen. So, bridging the gap between pro football, science, and the future of wellness, we have today Mr. Tywon Hubbard. He's not your average CEO. He's a former professional football player and NFL prospect turned hydrogen health expert. And he's now a driving force in the global therapeutic hydrogen movement. As the founder and CEO of H2 Hub LLC and the creator of H2 Minutes, the world's largest research-based molecular hydrogen education platform, Tywon is on a mission to make cutting-edge science accessible, practical, and impactful. Now, over the past decade, he's worn nearly every hat in the hydrogen industry, from corporate leadership, product development, direct sales, scientific evaluation, and public education. He's been mentored by the top hydrogen researchers and engineers and holds both level 1 and level 3 professional certifications from the Molecular Hydrogen Institute, which is also referred to as MHI. And he's the first person to do so. As chairman of MHI's educational committee, Tywon helped shape the 2023 MHI certification course developed by Dr. Tyler LeBaron, PhD. He also serves on the board of the American Hydrogen Health Association, AHHA. This is a mouthful. And that's an organization committed to transparency, integrity, and science-based standards in hydrogen health.
Welcome to Simply Walk the Talk. Our bodies and minds adapt to what we do most of the time. If you want to change your body and mind, you must change what it is you do most of the time. This podcast explores all things health, wellness, fitness, lifestyle, and biohacking. Stay tuned as we explore various thoughts, methods, and experiences from a multitude of conversations between our interesting guests and experts through many fields of work. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Simply walk the talk. Simply walk the talk.
Mr. Tywon Hubbard, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Josh. Man, I mean, dang, man, I sound important.
Well,
man. So thank you for having me on the show, though.
No, I appreciate you being here, and I wanted to go through all that so people understand that you definitely know what you're talking about, and that's why I wanted to have you on the show because I've been a fan of molecular hydrogen for a long time. And when I had some back and forth communications with Q Life, when I talked to them about coming onto the show and talking more about hydrogen because it's trending right now, they reached out to me and said, hey, we'd love to represent molecular hydrogen on your show, but we think we have the best person to do so for us on our behalf. And that's Mr. Tywon Hubbard. So I was like, okay, I watched some of your stuff. And it's not just recently. I've been watching your stuff for quite some time. And here we are. Now we're talking.
Yeah, man.
We've had a couple conversations before this recording. But as you noticed, whenever I was reading through all this, I got tripped up, because I know we talked about this offline, but I think this is important to bring up now. But, I used to have a speech impediment when I was younger. I've talked about it on the show before, but my older brother, he had one of his best friends growing up stuttered really bad and really heavily, I should say, because it's not bad. It's just, it's an effect that happens in the body and the body and the brain. And I feel like when we get excited, sometimes our brain is thinking much faster than what can come out of our mouth. And so we get tripped up. And I got tripped up a couple times just reading through this. And I've noticed that because I'm so empathetic, when I even talk about speech impediments, I have to slow down my talking because I can start stuttering as well. So I know this is something that has been a part of your life, but if we can talk about that so that we can preface what's going to occur throughout this episode if something comes up. Let's talk.
Yeah, man. No, I mean, basically, I've had a speech impediment ever since I was little. Went to speech therapy when I was younger. And I did all the training, and now it's like the boogeyman. It pops up on me randomly, randomly at times, and it's actually one of the reasons why my 8-minute videos is actually, formulated the way they are, where I do sentence by sentence on 8 minutes, because I do have this speech impediment. And it was one of the things that when I first started talking about molecular hydrogen, it was like the challenge, right? Because talking wasn't my forte. Being a professional athlete, or being an athlete, was, right. And that's one thing I love about football, was I was able to put the helmet on and I didn't have to talk, right. I was able to put the helmet on and I could show who I am through my body and through my skills. But then, God had different plans for me. He said, nah, bro, you're going to be talking. And so, with that in mind, I absolutely, deal with that on a regular basis. And it is something that, I don't allow to stop me from helping others, with what I believe is the most, important therapeutic agent in the world.
And when it comes to speech impediments, because I do know there's different types of speech impediments. And so what is the one that what is some that you deal with in terms of your situation?
Yeah. So basically, mine would be spammering. I forget the actual technical term for it, but stuttering, where I repeat things. But it would also be where I get stuck. And so I don't know the technical term for that, but it's where basically when I want to say something, it won't come out. And so that is typically what happens to me. I mean, it's been so bad, bro, where I'm doing 8-minute videos and I'm working through it because there's actual 8-minute like an 8-minute video series that we did on 8-minute videos that we did on the top 10 causes of death listed by the CDC, or hydrogen versus the top 10 causes of death listed by the CDC. And that is probably the most comprehensive videos we've actually done on 8 minutes. And it's pretty remarkable what we had to put into those videos. I mean, every video contains something like 20 plus studies that was referenced for each category, but they were long filming sessions. And so I had to work through that, and I literally was punching papers because I'm literally punching papers because I couldn't get the words out that I wanted to. And so I'm having 3-hour, 4-hour filming sessions. Oh man, that's the classic, bro. That's I was gonna say, man, that's where I first started. So that's my first video that I ever did. That was starting 8 minutes. This was probably like 8 years ago, maybe 9 years ago. So these are my first videos I ever done.
Really, really quick. Sorry to cut you off, but for those of you that are not watching this and only listening, what Tywon is referring to is I've got a couple of his. I pulled up the old archive videos from back in the day, and I've got it playing on the screen just to kind of have this in the background so you know what he's talking about. And I pulled up his episode 1, and I'm now on showing episode 3, and just kind of scrolling through it so you understand the evolution of what he's talking about, and we can see how the production value has changed and has gotten better over time. And I'm on 7 now, and we can go all the way down to what do we have, 76. This is one of the ones that I watched. We'll probably refer to, by the way, but this is H2 Minutes on YouTube. This is the YouTube platform, and I'll provide some of this into the show notes so that you guys can click on it quite easily. But we've got H2 Minutes on YouTube, but then also we've got let's go to another one, like this tab instead. This is h2hub.com. So this is Tywon's website. Oops, that was me. Sorry. Let me go back. Yeah, well, this is what happens in probably on my end. Well, let me stop sharing for now. And but I was going to his website, which is H2Hub with two B's, by the way, for last name Hubbard, two B's, right? So
Yep.
H2Hub.com. And that is what we'll be referring to for some of these in-depth conversations. But I just wanted to put that in there. So please continue.
Yeah. No. So basically, I had to go through that series, doing that, working through my speech impediment issues, and talking about the frustration of doing 4 hours of filming, and stuttering and having to get the line. And so, yeah, so this is why I end up doing my videos that way. We have, and I continue to branch out and push myself. Just like I did as an athlete, I do the same thing with my profession, and with communication, right? And so pushing myself. And so we've actually started producing more videos where I'm more naturally free flowing talking and just practicing and training on being able to work through my triggers for speech, for my speech impediment.
It's amazing. And I wanted, I know we definitely didn't plan on talking about that when we first scheduled this call, but I know it's something that is important, definitely for me, but also for people out there who might be dealing with something very similar. This is an easier way to relate, because the last thing we would want anyone to think, especially when we're doing a long form conversation like right now, is if you get stuck or if you're stammering or something like that happens, it's not because you don't know what you're talking about. It's because you're dealing with something. So I think it's really good to put that out there ahead of time so that people can understand what's happening. It's important.
No, man. Absolutely.
All right. So we've talked about a little bit, we kind of glossed over this football career. Let's touch on that a little bit, because I think that's important too. You don't typically see a lot of former professional athletes like being seen as like these experts in something like molecular hydrogen, right? It's like normally you stay in your lane. It's all about sports and working out. But here you are talking about, you're educating me on molecular hydrogen. And I'm also a former professional athlete as well. I played basketball at a very high level. But you really took it. You were like a true NFL prospect. So I want to hear a little bit about that. And then we can start talking about hydrogen and all its benefits.
Yeah, man. So first and foremost, I figured out very quickly when I was young that I was athletically gifted. And I had unfortunately, but it is my cards, right? I had the quintessential Black struggle story, right? So I have a single mom. I'm the only man in the house. I'm the only boy with two sisters, Shelly and Shantae.
Older or younger?
So, older sister, and then the younger sister. I was a middle kid.
Middle child. Oh,
I was a middle child, brother. And so I figured out pretty quickly I wanted to do something to help my family, and I needed to try to figure out how I can get them out of the predicament of financial struggles and just going through things. And so I found out pretty quickly that I was good athletically, and literally my playing football in a neighborhood, playing football in like a neighborhood apartment complex. A friend's dad saw me playing and he was like, yo, can I like talk with your mom? And I'm like, I guess. And he's like, your son's got skills. I think he should be playing. And so I'll pay for him to play. And so this is how it all got started. And that led to me basically playing football for about 20 years of my life. I saw football as a vehicle to accomplish three things, to bring glory to God, to provide for my family, and to build a platform to help others. So that's what I saw it as. I thought this is what I'm doing it for. And that led me down a long road that led towards basically me being an NFL prospect. And that went through. Yeah. So basically I played running back. And so I did that for my entire career. It was basically special teams. So like kick returner, running back, punt return. I was the speed guy. But I also have I guess I like to hit. So I like to hit. So it wasn't just juking people. I wanted to hit you too, and so take out some aggression. So anyway, I did that for a long time. And what ultimately ended up happening was I went through college. I went through the woes of college. I did not have a college career that I would hoped and dreamed of. I ran into a bunch of, what do you call it, politics. I ran into a bunch of politics, as well as I had some injuries. So basically coming out of high school, I tore my ACL and medial meniscus, totally wrecked my knee, had to get total reconstructive surgery. And so that affected me being able to go to K-State when I was younger, and I ended up having to go the JUCO route. And I went through. I played at Butler Community College for a couple years, and then I went from there to Central Missouri, which is a D2 school.
Butler's in Kansas, right?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, I know it.
El Dorado, Kansas, and so
yeah.
And then I went to Central Missouri for a couple years, and then after that, I went to my pro day and I crushed it. So much so that I had to do I had the Chiefs and the Vikings wanting to do private workouts with me. And they were like, where's your representation? We need the film, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, man, I went through politics. And so that's where I got my first agent. And then at that same pro day. And then I started to basically do some work, some private workouts with some CFL teams. And I legit thought I was going to be playing in the CFL. And then I think Winnipeg went with another running back instead of me. So I ended up basically having to find some place to play, right? So, I mean, it's the thing about making it professionally. You have to continue to play. You can't just sit for 3 years and then say, hey, I'm going to be in the NFL. That's not how it works. And so I ended up playing basically arena ball in Wichita, Kansas. There was a professional indoor football team in Wichita, Kansas called the Wichita Wild. And I played for that team for a couple of years while I was rotating agents basically to make it to the league. And I did exceptionally well. I mean, really well. Actually, I have sitting here, I got some couple hardware.
Some hardware.
I got some hardware. I got hardware from winning championships and stuff. I think my first season there, I ended up doing the third highest all-purpose yards for the entire season ever and stuff like that. So I did really well, to the point to where the general manager was like, your skill set is above this level. Like, we got to get you out of here, basically. And that's when it all basically came to a head, where I actually ended up landing the right type of representation, because I did a actual football camp in Wichita, Kansas, with another with other professional athletes, as well as some some football, some NFL players. One of them was Cameron Wembley. He used to play for the Raiders, I think the Browns as well. But Cameron Wembley, I remember talking with him, and he was like, yeah, dude, like, NFL's like a private golf club, bro. You got to know somebody to get in. He's like, the best athletes I've ever played with are not in the league because they just didn't have the right representation. So needless to say, I was like, I got to find some representation. And so prayed about it and everything, man. And I ended up landing landing some representation with a sports agency called Atlas Sports Agency. It was headed up by a gentleman named JT Johnson. He was the lead agent, and he represented people like Keenan Allen, who played for the San Diego Chargers, David Amerson, just a bunch of other big name guys, as well as me. And so this all led to me doing a private workout with all 32 NFL teams in attendance, and I crushed it. And so I'm like, hey, I got teams looking at me. Yeah, I got the Dolphins. I got the Cardinals. I got a couple teams looking at me. Raiders. I mean, someone's got to bring me in camp. And that year, I didn't get brought into camp. Now, there's other stories now connected to hydrogen, right? There's things that was happening with hydrogen at the same time. And this led me to have to make a choice, because I basically had about another year or two of like serious eligibility with the NFL if they're going to consider me. Because, being 26 years old or 27 years old, you're too old. You're too old to play in the league. The league is a young man's game, unfortunately, when it comes to getting in. And so I I had to make some choices about which direction I was going to go. But there's a whole backstory with hydrogen connected to that. But that's basically how I ended up becoming an NFL prospect, and then my football career.
It's an amazing story, and there's a lot of similarities to what you went through versus what I went through. Very, very like it's kind of a similar path. And the reason why I wanted to spend as much time talking about that is because I kind of figured there would be something like that that would be similar. Um, People who have watched my show know a little bit of my story, but it was kind of the same thing. Like I ended up going to a JUCO. I ended up breaking my finger when we made it to the national championships. We ended up losing in the national championships. I played with a broken finger. And then when I got to the university, I went to a smaller university in the NAIA league, which is why I know Butler and things like that, right? Because I knew of Butler through the JUCO arena, but also through the NAIA group. And I ended up breaking my wrist when a dude tried to dunk on me, and I'm jumping with him. He forearms me in midair, and I'm falling back because I'm top heavy, and I'm falling back. And I had two decisions, right? I either put my hand down or fall on my head, and I did both.
Yeah, straight up.
You know what I mean? So that obviously affected my career. I had hopes of like playing because I was a late bloomer. So that's also part of the politics thing. But what ended up getting me a couple gigs to play overseas is because when I moved to New York, I moved to do modeling and acting, but I was playing basketball to kind of keep me in shape and keep me busy while I wasn't doing modeling or acting gigs. And that's when I ended up getting seen by a few people who have some power, right? Like kind of like you saying you have to have representation. So I had some people that were vouching for me, was able to go over and play. And again, another politics situation where I played so well at some of these NBA camps and some of these D-League camps that I went to. They're like, wait, who represents you? Like, what school did you go to? Like, why didn't you play D1? And it's like, well, because I didn't, like I grew up in a small town and I had some injuries, and then all they hear is excuses. And I was older because I was a late bloomer, so I didn't get the opportunities that I wanted. But I'm very happy that life worked out the way it did, because here I am today and here you are. And I would love to find that connection, because you touched on it a couple times, but I would like to touch on that connection with hydrogen and your career and all that.
Yeah, man. So basically I think it would have been around 2 or 3 years before I retired from football. My wife's cousin introduced me to alkaline ionized water. And so he basically said, hey, dude, I got this amazing water. You definitely need to be on it. It's got all these wonderful health effects. And I, needless to say, was uber skeptical. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, nah, man, I'm not the biggest, easiest, trusting person. I have a skeptical mind as well. So I'm like, nah, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about, homie. And the stuff he was saying.
Was he following Dr. Sebi?
No, no. But it sounds like it. Because I was like, homie, like he basically would come up and he was telling me all these wonderful effects that it had, and so me being not only an athlete, but obviously studying corporate fitness in college and stuff like that. So I have some basic biology classes, some stuff under my belt. I'm like, bro, you talking about water doing stuff I never heard of nothing water is able to do. I mean, water is essential. We need it, but brother, you talking about like water going to make you have red wings and fly away. You know what I mean? And so to me, I was like, no, but I did take a couple gallons from him. He brought some gallons over, and I was training pretty heavy at that time, obviously. And as being an athlete, you become very acquainted with your body and your recovery times and stuff like that. And so I noticed some improvements in my recovery. Like I feel like I recovered like 20%, 30% faster, which is like crazy considering that, like my leg workouts, like at the time, being a running back or being any athlete, you have to have powerful legs and good frame. But trying to make it to NFL, you definitely have to put in the work to have a strong lower half. Dude, I was like, I recovered, in something that would typically take me, 5 to 7 days for the soreness to wear off, something like 3 to 4 days. And I was like, okay, this is kind of crazy. And so I didn't know anything about it, let it go. went on. Forgot about it. Some time passed, and then it gets brought up again, right? And so I'm like, all right, well, he brings this subject matter up, blah 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 blah. I drink the water. I know same kind of thing. So now, like, okay, I gotta crack the code. Something's up. I don't know. I got a hunch. Something's up. And so I start to research. And I started to look online and try to figure it out. But all I'm finding is blog articles and companies talking about this stuff. So I'm like, I don't know what's true or not true. Like, I can't discern what is factual, you know? And so I was just stumped, man. And I have a very inquisitive mind. So I just wanted to know and figure it out. And so I ended up praying to God about it and say, hey, Jesus, please let me know if there's something here. And so that's what I did. And I kid you not, like 2 weeks later, I see a gentleman on Facebook teaching about the chemistry of these water ionizers that produce this water. And he's not just talking like the ordinary stuff. He's getting into the depths and the weeds of the science, right? Like actual chemistry. And so I'm like, okay, I gotta contact this guy, you know? And like, bro, give me the answers. You got the answers. So what's going on? And he was like, look, this is basic high school chemistry. They're decomposing water into its natural elements using electricity. So basically at the cathode or the negative terminal or electrode, you're going to be basically going to be producing hydrogen gas, right? You're going to decompose water into hydrogen gas. And as a byproduct, the pH is going to increase. And at the anode or the positive terminal, you're going to be basically oxidizing water, right, into oxygen, and the pH of the water is going to decrease, right? So it's going to become more acidic. And so I was like, okay, so this makes a whole lot of sense, because like they would, share these gallons of water with you, and you would have thought the dang water was carbonated. How many bubbles? It's just littered with bubbles everywhere. It's like foggy, cloudy, just water. And so I was like, oh, so that's hydrogen gas. And he was like, yeah. And then so I ended up looking up molecular hydrogen or hydrogen gas, and I typed in whatever disease model I wanted, right? Whatever disease model I wanted, diabetes or strokes or whatever, and then PubMed, right? And so he kind of put me onto that, like look up some of the medical publications. And so I did that, and I was blown away, like absolutely blown away. I was like, so many medical articles. And this was like 12, 13 years ago, and there's way more now. But it was like a ton of medical articles. I started reading medical studies on this. And
really quick, hold that thought, please. But I just want to jump in to make sure I'm clear, because when your wife's cousin, you said it was your wife's cousin, when your wife's cousin introduced it to you, he introduced it to you as alkaline water, right?
As alkaline water, exactly.
So did he know all the stuff that you ended up finding out, that it's actually
absolutely
hydrogen?
not. Absolutely okay. Not. Absolutely okay. Not. No.
Just want to be clear on that. Okay.
Yes. Absolutely not. No. Like there was a whole bunch of different, particular therapeutic agents or mechanisms that they proposed, like negative ORP or like microclustering of the water, whole bunch of things. Water's full of extra free electrons, a bunch of different things that they were marketing, but turns out it was just hydrogen gas all along. And so I started to research this, and I started to read medical publications. Never read medical publications before that, right? So I would read a couple lines and was like, I don't know what that word is. So then I'm going to go study. I'm going to type into Google whatever that word is. And then I would do the same thing, and I read a couple more words. Don't know what that word is. And I just kept doing that and doing that and doing that until I read like hundreds of articles. And I was like, okay, I'm convinced I just discovered like a diamond in the rough or something that no one's talking about. And so
what year was this?
This would have been around 2013 probably.
Okay. All right. So yeah, this is around the time that I was dabbling into it as well. So it's interesting. Like the reason why I asked that, because I wanted to kind of find out, because I also felt like nobody was talking about it at that time, but clearly you and I were on parallel paths, right?
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely. Because I was like, bro, no one's talking about this. Everyone's talking about these water ionizers and the alkaline pH on the water, and making sure that you're going to alkalize your body and all these kind of other things that they're talking about. But then I'm finding out that the actual therapeutic agent is hydrogen gas that's dissolved into the water. And so I'm like, okay, I started talking to everybody about it. I was like, look, I gotta get the message out. And like like I said earlier in the show, right? Like stuttering's not stopping this. Like once I seen what it was doing in some of the cancer models and diabetes models and strokes or like Alzheimer's, like all the different particular disease models, I was like, dude, this can help so many people. And so I was like, I gotta talk. And so I ended up doing that, and I'm sharing it. I actually ended up buying one of these systems, one of these.
And what system was that? Because that's what I wanted to find out too. Is the system that your wife's cousin was using?
Yes, correct. So he was actually using what's called an SD501 Kangen system.
Okay, that's what I figured.
Kangen water. Kangen water. So the company Enagic. And so he basically was like, yeah, dude, it's awesome stuff. So I ended up getting the system, right? Spent a ton of money. We got one of these units. It cost like $5,000 or something. And I started sharing the water and trying to tell people about it. I was just like, look, and whatever they were saying, I wasn't saying. I made literally like I had my own presentation talking about, the hydrogen gas in the water and all this kind of stuff. And yeah, man, I started sharing the message out, and to the point to where I started building a name for myself, to the point where I started getting some notoriety, not just in locally, but like on the internet. Like people started to catch on. Hey, this little black boy is smart about hydrogen. And so yeah. And so that ended up happening at the same time that my football career with, Atlas Sports Agency happened, right? Like when I kind of got that deal with this agency. And so I'm having these basically parallel paths start to form. And then I basically come to a head at the time that time I didn't get brought into camp, right? So at the same time, this notoriety built on hydrogen, where a company actually in Florida was like, yo, we would like to hire you as kind of our lead educator and technician for hydrogen. And so I'm like, I got this right here, which is like NFL, been working for this 20 years in my life, blah, 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 blah. This is like a side project. I want to help people with it because I learned about it and everything else. And then I'm like, wait a minute. Are you telling me you want me to go this direction? Because this is it. I did it. I mean, I ran a crazy fast 40 time, tested well. I mean, I did all the stuff I needed to do, had the film, had the agents. I had all the stuff that was there that would otherwise give me the opportunity, because all I wanted was the opportunity, right? To get brought into camp. And it didn't happen, but this one's open. And so I was like, all right, I had to shuck it up, cry a little bit, and then I took the opportunity. I leaped. And so that led me to Florida. And I worked for that company for about 7 months, doing my thing, continuing to do what I do, where I'm educating, I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm doing all those things. And in 7 months, I had 3 opportunities to basically own my own hydrogen company. So I had a group of investors out of California. It was a board of medical doctors that caught wind of this research, and they wanted to import a prepackaged hydrogen water, canned beverage or canned water into the States. And they were looking for somebody to be the face of the company. And they caught wind of me. I wrote basically at the time, I wrote a document called Know Your Water. It's kind of like a mini book. I wrote this document, and it went into a lot of the actual, biology of it goes into a lot of the biology and water, and basically, some of the effects of hydrogen gas and all this kind of stuff. And it was kind of what's what I'm thinking about. I would just say at the time, there really wasn't anything out there like it. Right. Mm-hmm. And so what ended up happening was basically that document got shared around with a couple of individuals in the industry, and they were like, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about. So they wanted to hire me. I had a group of investors in Canada who also were looking for somebody to partner with to own their own hydrogen company. There was another company that was in Florida. And so I took the one when I had the most power, the most say, and it had the most influence. And so I went with a group of investors out of Canada, and I ended up, bringing a hydrogen product to market, a brand new type of system that's never really been on the market before, into the United States. And so I pioneered somewhat of a technology a new technology in the United States. It's called a hydrogen infusion machine, and did that and worked with that group of investors for about 2 years. 2 years. And then after that, they went in a different direction. And at that point, I had everything I needed to start my own company. Right. And so I took all the experience and, knowledge at the time, because at this time, like, I just had great exposure. I just got exposed to like scientists, researchers, and engineers. At the same time, I got exposed to a bunch of technology over that basically 2 year, 3 year period. And I just felt like I got 10 years of experience downloaded in even in 3 years. And so I was like, okay, I got all this information. I'm about to bust out the seams. Like, you know what I'm saying? So like, how do I leverage it? And so that's where I was like, well, one thing is that when I started this information wasn't readily available, and it wasn't done in a format that anyone can understand. Like, I had to put in so much work to read medical studies. And I'm sorry, you're not waking up. Majority of people not waking up every day saying, hey baby, grab my coffee, I'm about to go read 10 medical studies. Like, that's typically not what happens. And so I was like, I got to get this information out there. So we came up with the idea of H2 minutes. And so we started to produce simple, basically 2-minute videos over hydrogen, all things hydrogen, touching on different concepts, misconceptions, the basic kind of, the fundamentals of H2. And then also I got a product that I ended up finding out didn't make H2 very well when I first started. So unfortunately, though SD 501, they have, or I would just put it into, I would say, conventional water ionizers. They have limitations and drawbacks from producing consistent and therapeutic levels of hydrogen gas in water universally across the board for everybody. And because of that, there's some issues that can happen with scaling and all kind of stuff. And so I ended up finding out that my system that I had was producing pretty low levels, and the system that we were using in Wichita, Kansas, was producing no detectable levels of hydrogen gas at all, even though there were visible show bubbles. That's what I call them, show bubbles. Even though there were visible bubbles in the water, the actual dissolved hydrogen gas concentration was undetectable. It was under 0.1 milligrams per liter. And so this is where people start noticing that when they're drinking this type of water, which is from the scientific literature, it's basically referred to as electrolytes reduced water. They start drinking this water and they drink it fresh from the system, right? Fresh from a clean, brand new machine. They notice all these effects. But then after a couple months or whatever of using the device, or even like a little longer, yeah, bro, like they end up noticing that the effects of the water diminish on their body. And this is due to what you're seeing in this video that you're showing, because that video actually goes through the drawbacks of
this one here. This
yes,
is episode 54.
Episode 54.
It says the problem with alkaline water ionizers. So I have it pulled up for those who are not watching. Please refer back to the video portion of this podcast so you can see what I'm talking about. And then obviously we will do our best to highlight this in the show notes so you can specifically go to it. But yeah, this is what he's talking about.
Yeah, So absolutely. So there's some issues where the systems are heavily relied on the conductivity of water, the minerals in water to run properly. If you don't have 80 to 100 TDS, total dissolved solids in the water, you're likely not going to produce hydrogen gas very well. If you're not going to produce it, the system doesn't have any kind of dissolver technology, so it doesn't dissolve hydrogen gas in the water very well. And so these systems are kind of notorious for having lower levels of hydrogen gas dissolved into water. And you typically have to have high maintenance to ensure that you're going to continue to maintain a therapeutic level of hydrogen gas within the water. So this is why people can use it for a couple months, notice all these benefits. And then after a couple months, they say, wow, like I don't feel the same effects anymore. And if they probably were to check the systems, they'll likely their H2 concentrations that it was providing, the dissolved hydrogen concentration has diminished due to scaling and other issues. So this is what ended up happening. I noticed that I was like, well, okay, educating people is one thing. Once you educate people, they are like, how do I get it? You know? And I
Yeah.
already had a deep wound, so to speak, of figuring out that, you spend $5,000 and you find out that the thing that you spent $5,000 on is not very good at making therapeutic levels or consistent therapeutic levels of hydrogen gas within water. It's like, wow, like, dude, you basically feel like you got took. Like, dang, man, I lost all this money, right? And so I was like, okay, well, I got to figure out a way to help people navigate the market. And so we do education. We do basically education and navigation. Like, that's what I do every day, is help people by either teaching them about it, and then I help people by navigating. So that's how my company H2 Hub got started. It was birthed out of a necessity after educating people. I needed to figure out a way to objectively help them find the right hydrogen products that's going to give them, safe, consistent, and reliable therapeutic levels of hydrogen gas.
And that's exactly why we have you here. So I want to thank you again for coming on, because what we're essentially doing is leveraging your immense amount of experience and education and research in the field of molecular hydrogen and so on, and we're distilling that down, for a lack of a better word, but we're distilling that down into bite-sized bits of information that people can lean into. And so with that, let's go back to the very beginning of what hydrogen is in the first place, because I'm sure there's some people on here going, yeah, but when are you guys going to talk about what hydrogen is all about? Because we talked about your background. That's amazing. It's a good story to get you to where you are today, so to speak. But then let's talk about what exactly is hydrogen. I know that you do have the H2 minutes version of that, so people can go to that as well. But let's hear it from the horse's mouth. I'm not calling you a horse, but the fact that you're here, the expert's mouth. Let's hear it in real time. What is hydrogen, and why should we even care about it?
Yeah, man. So first things first, hydrogen is the first element to ever exist. It is the smallest and lightest element. An element is just a basic fundamental substance or particle or atom that constitutes or makes up the universe. And so hydrogen is the first element, and like I said, the smallest one. And it is essential for all of life as well as the universe itself. So for example, hydrogen by number of atoms makes up 90% of the universe. By mass or by its weight makes up 75% of the universe, which is incredible. Hydrogen by number of atoms makes up about 62% of the human body, and by weight 10%. So it's really, really light. But most of us have no idea that we're majority H2. I mean, not H2, I should say hydrogen. Sorry. And so hydrogen does have distinctive forms, right? There's other species of hydrogen or forms of hydrogen. And so I think it's important for us to define those forms before we get into hydrogen therapy and actual like molecular hydrogen, truly get to understand it. And so there are 4 forms of hydrogen. The first form would be a single proton, is sometimes referred to as a hydrogen cation or a hydrogen ion. Obviously a proton, is a fundamental particle, makes up atoms, right? They basically the number of them, determines the atomic mass, of a atom. It's fundamental to all of existence. So that's the first form of hydrogen. And then we have a hydrogen atom, which is 1 proton and 1 electron. It is very reactive, is known as a free radical. And it's heavily utilized, right? It's heavily utilized in organic chemistry. And also it constitutes, or it makes up water, right? So water is 2 hydrogen atoms bonded to 1 oxygen atom. And then we have molecular hydrogen or hydrogen gas, which is 2 protons and 2 electrons. It is the gaseous form of hydrogen, has many different names: the hydrogen molecule, diatomic hydrogen, dihydrogen. That is the smallest and lightest gas in the universe. And so what I mean by small, I'm talking small. So hydrogen is 0.15 nanometers, or approximately 150 picometers. A picometer is a trillionth of a meter wide. So that's wide. So to kind of put this into perspective for you guys of how small this really is, 0.15 nanometers, basically the size of a single hydrogen molecule, is 17 times smaller than the width of the DNA double helix. So that's how small that is. It is incredibly tiny. Another example that I've done with this is hydrogen. You can fit approximately 3 million hydrogen molecules across the width of a single strand of hair. That puts you in, gives you a little bit of a ballpark of just how tiny molecular hydrogen is. And so that is kind of the third form of hydrogen. And then the last one will be hydride, which is 1 proton and 2 electrons. And hydride basically is kind of it's a rare form of hydrogen. It's really only found in complex compounds. Something like sodium borohydride, you'll hear that at the end, hydride at the end, lets you know that it actually has this form of hydrogen in it. And it basically functions kind of like as a strong base. And so these will be the four kind of distinctive forms of hydrogen, not including its isotopes, such as like protium, deuterium, and tritium. But technically, those are the four forms of hydrogen. And what most people get confused on when they hear hydrogen-rich water is they think, well, why would I ever want to drink hydrogen-rich water, or hydrogen water, which water already has hydrogen in it. And really what they're confused about is hydrogen water is talking about the gas in the water. It's not talking about the atom that's bonded to the oxygen.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because what you'll notice when you and I are talking about this gas, we refer to it as molecular hydrogen, just to distinguish between the other forms of hydrogen. So I'm glad you touched on that, because that is something that people will go, well, it's, molecular hydrogen is a mouthful, but it does help to distinguish what we're talking about.
Yes. Oh, yes. No. Yeah. No. Like absolutely. I use molecular hydrogen, or I use hydrogen gas a lot, and I'll accentuate on the gas so that people understand I'm talking about a gas. And so when you think of hydrogen-rich water, you should think of, let's say, for example, carbonated water. Like, I don't know who came up with these terms or why scientists name them this way, but basically, waters are basically characterized. How do I say this? I would say gases in water. Hold on, so let me go ahead and say that again. So water itself, these different forms of water are typically named based off their characteristics. So for example, carbonated water is going to have carbon dioxide gas in it. Oxygenated water is going to have oxygen gas dissolved into it, right? Ozonated water is going to have ozone gas dissolved into it. So this is why we call it hydrogen water, right? Because it has hydrogen gas dissolved into it. And so I like to distinguish, because we typically have, like basic, public, the basic public kind of has their own ideas about where hydrogen can be found and where it's not found. So, it's like maybe some people might know hydrogen is, used in the sun to produce, a lot of energy and stuff. So, basically like the sun runs off of hydrogen, or they think of hydrogen as a fuel, or hydrogen gas, or, hydrogen as a fuel, or they think of hydrogen in water. That's the most common one. It's like, yeah, hydrogen makes it water. But the last thing we typically think about is, hydrogen in water, like hydrogen gas dissolved into water. And so I think I kind of try to dispel that and say, hey, no, like you have to really understand this is just what you're seeing is something that you already see somewhere else. You're just not used to it being with hydrogen, right? Like you're used to carbonated water. They're all over the shelves at your store. You know what I mean? Absolutely. They're everywhere.
Yeah, it's cool because like I didn't realize this until you pointed it out just now, but there for a while I was researching and experimenting with deuterium depleted water, and it wasn't until right now that I found out that deuterium is actually an isotope of hydrogen. I didn't know that.
Yep.
That's interesting, because deuterium, if I remember correctly, is actually heavy. Right?
Heavy hydrogen. Yep. Heavy hydrogen. Right? Basically, yes, correct. Deuterium has an extra neutron in its actual nucleus of the atom. And so it makes it heavier. And so that's what deuterium is compared to protium, which doesn't have that extra neutron.
So fascinating. See, I knew you would know what you're talking about, of course, right? This for me, I'm geeking out right now. This is very fascinating. And so, okay, so we've gone from understanding the different forms of hydrogen. Now let's get into, whatever next steps you want to go, because I know you're very well versed in educating people kind of from the beginning and then taking them on a journey. Where's the next stop on this journey?
Yeah. So like the next stop on this journey is defining what hydrogen therapy is, right? So the next stop would say, okay, so I get that. So there's this idea of hydrogen water and this gas benefiting us. What is hydrogen therapy? And so a simple definition of hydrogen therapy is the administration of hydrogen gas to the human body to reap its medical benefits. That's all hydrogen therapy is. You're administering hydrogen gas to the human body to reap its medical benefits. Now, administration can happen in many different ways, right? So there's hydrogen rich water, there's like breathing hydrogen gas, there's soaking in hydrogen rich water, right? Like a hydrogen bath, right? There's like intravenous injections or like IVs, right? So hydrogen rich saline. So hydrogen gas can be dissolved into saline and then funneled through an IV. There are multiple different ways to administer hydrogen gas to the human body, but by definition, that's what it is. All those forms are trying to get hydrogen into the body so they can reap its medical benefits.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. And so all those different administrations have their own, what you would call technical terms would be pharmacokinetics, but basically how they enter the body and how they exit the body, and even can have their own distinctive kind of therapeutic effects on the body because how they go into the body. And so I think this is kind of where you get into the territory of saying, okay, so I get kind of, how maybe hydrogen rich water can benefit us in a unique way. And maybe hydrogen inhalation can benefit us in a different way. And so I actually like to walk people through this a little bit so they can see this kind of like formulated in their brain. And so when you drink hydrogen rich water, and you have to need to understand what hydrogen water actually is first. So hydrogen rich water, is basically hydrogen gas that's dissolved into water up to therapeutic concentrations. So that is what hydrogen water is, because technically all water has hydrogen gas in it. Our ordinary tap water, our bottled water has hydrogen gas in it. It's just the levels are so low that we don't get any benefits from it. So, for example, a bottled water is probably going to have something akin to 0.2 to 0.8 parts per trillion of hydrogen gas dissolved into it, because hydrogen gas exists in very, very low levels in our atmosphere. And all atmospheric gases dissolve into solution, dissolve into water. Right. We learned this from our homie Henry's gas law. And so, based on pressure and temperature, these atmospheric gases are going to naturally dissolve into water. And so our atmosphere has basically like 0.0000005% hydrogen gas. So basically a millionth of the atmosphere is hydrogen, right? So it's very, very low levels of hydrogen gas in our atmosphere, but that hydrogen gas does get into water. And so, so what actually makes hydrogen water unique and different is that you're actually dissolving hydrogen gas into the solution up to a therapeutic concentration. And this is what we kind of see in the studies, what that therapeutic concentration is. Kind of the minimum threshold for hydrogen-rich water would be like 0.5 milligrams per liter. This would be kind of like for humans. This is kind of like the lower level you want to kind of aim at. And then hydrogen saturation point are basically when you feel hydrogen, under normal conditions, when you dissolve hydrogen gas into water. Let's say if you had like a glass of water, just an ordinary water on your countertop, and you were able to take hydrogen gas and just bubble it into the water. You just put just take a tube and just from like a hydrogen gas generator or something, and you just bubble pure hydrogen gas into that water. The maximum amount you're going to get under normal conditions will be 1.57 or 1.6 milligrams per liter. So that is what hydrogen-rich water is, and now you can consume that and get benefits from it. And because the levels are basically in that water is about 1 million times more hydrogen gas than what is actually in your ordinary tap water. So this is what hydrogen water is by definition. And when you consume hydrogen-rich water, it takes a direct path through your gastrointestinal tract, and it has time to act and induce therapeutic effects in your stomach. And then it takes a direct path to your small intestines, and it has time to act to induce therapeutic effects in your intestines, right? And then it actually diffuses through our intestinal mucosa or intestinal barrier, and gets into systemic circulation via the venous systems, like your veins. It takes a direct path and hits your liver, right? So now hydrogen gas is basically inducing and regulating multiple different therapeutic effects in the liver. And then it takes a direct path to your lungs, where you lose about 60% of the gas, and then 40% of it goes into your arterial system, and now makes a direct way to your heart, and it makes your way to your, like basically like your muscle groups and then your brain. And so this is how hydrogen water goes in. So now you actually got to see, now when you drink hydrogen rich water, it's hitting particular organs at a particular time with a particular level, right? As it funnels and goes into your body. And so because it hits these organs and these systems in this particular way, in this particular order, hydrogen rich water can have its own kind of distinct therapeutic effects. When you breathe hydrogen gas, right? It's another administration method. When you breathe hydrogen gas, it goes right into your respiratory system and takes a direct path into your arterial system. So you bypass the whole gastrointestinal tract, right? And now it funnels around, and you can actually saturate your body. It's going to have its own distinctive therapeutic effects. So this is why the administration methods are so important, why the researchers are looking at all of them, because each one can have its own kind of distinctive effects on our bodies. And so that would be kind of going over the administration methods. And then the next thing is you'd be talking about the benefits. What is hydrogen gas? Like, how does it help you in your body? What if it's like, what is its most kind of like common benefits on the body? And that's something we can touch on next if you want to.
Yeah, I would love to do that, because again, I'm sure people are kind of wondering. There's it's obvious to us, people who are really in the trenches out here utilizing these methods and these compounds. We understand how good it is, but before we get to what it does in the body, I would love to touch on, because I see behind you, you've got many different types of water generators that you consume as water. And then you mentioned earlier about having a glass of water on the table. You infuse it with a hydrogen generator. I do this a lot. However, one of the things that I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on this is, once you get into the trenches and you get very deep into the research, you notice that there's conversations about the different types of containers that you might use and the type of devices you might use. You touched on the ionizers and their problems. Over time, they don't produce the same effect, and eventually you're getting nothing, right? Just fake bubbles. But then one of the things I've heard, and correct me if this is incorrect, but one of the things I've heard about even consuming the water via tablets or via an infusion method is that there's the different types of containers hold the hydrogen better, and also the temperature of the water maybe different temperatures hold better. So what is your thoughts on that, so people really hear it right away?
Yeah. So first and foremost, I'll just go ahead and I'll just talk about the containers, and then we can touch on the technology. So first and foremost, when you're talking about containers, hydrogen, like I said earlier in the podcast, it's the smallest and lightest gas in the universe, and it's neutral in its charge. So it can basically diffuse through all materials. Hydrogen is pretty remarkable at escaping. It's the master escape artist. And so this is why it's best, if you're going to be trying to store hydrogen-rich water, that you do it in a container that's probably not plastic, because plastic's more porous than something like glass. It's better to contain hydrogen gas in something like glass, or like a stainless steel, or like a double wall thermos, something along these lines. And what's most important that nobody really talks about is not just the container material. And I should say this as well. Aluminum with kind of like a polyethylene liner, similar to what you see with something like a Coke can, right? It's going to have like this polyethylene plastic liner on the inside. those aluminum cans can also hold and store hydrogen better than other materials.
That's what I
But
use.
yes, so but like what most people don't know or what they don't realize is that what they should be doing is filling their water all the way to the brim and then putting the lid on with no air gaps. Because if you have an air gap at the top of your bottle, hydrogen will just simply escape to the air gap. And so this is why it's really important to make sure you always fill if you're going to be storing hydrogen water, you always fill it up to the brim, and then you put your lid on. And if you can, you put it in like you put it in a place that's cold. You put it in
Exactly how I do it.
in the refrigerator, because hydrogen's retention in water increases as the water temperature decreases. And so this is kind of the technical term of this would be called half-life, hydrogen's half-life in water. So hydrogen's half-life, meaning like how fast does half of the hydrogen gas leave, like the time frame. What's the time frame, right, for half of the hydrogen gas to leave from the solution? Okay, hydrogen's half-life under normal conditions, SATP conditions, right? 77 degrees Fahrenheit, one ATM is what it's called, or basically standard atmospheric pressure. Those conditions, hydrogen's half-life is 2 hours. So basically, if I were to have hydrogen water on my countertop, this is basically just for like the average consumer. If you have hydrogen water on your countertop in a glass, open to the atmosphere, and it has 1.6 parts per million or milligrams per liter. They basically mean the same thing, right? Of hydrogen gas dissolved into that water. That is the concentration. In 2 hours, half the hydrogen is going to be gone. So you're going to have 0.8 milligrams per liter or ppm remaining in that glass. So hydrogen escapes from solution really quickly. This technical terms and all this stuff like this can make it kind of confusing. So like, I just like to use analogies like, hey, we always talk about pop going flat, right? Soda's going flat. Oh man, hey, dang man, my soda's flat. What you didn't know is that there's technical terms for why your sodas are going flat, and it's called half-life. And so this is what's happening, this is what's happening with your hydrogen-rich water. It's equilibrating with the atmosphere, right, and losing hydrogen gas. And so this is why it's important when you cool the water down, you basically extend hydrogen's half-life, right? So you make it takes longer for hydrogen to exit the solution. And so, and you effectively can increase hydrogen's what's called solubility, how well it dissolves into water and how long it likes to stay in water. And so typically, if you're talking about water that's around, let's say, freezing, right, compared to your ordinary, water, your like ordinary water that's at room temperature, the water that's at freezing or close to freezing, right, 33 degrees, maybe 34 degrees, is going to have 25% increase in its solubility, and its hydrogen retention, how long hydrogen is staying in the water, is drastically increased compared to at room temperature. You're just slowing everything down.
Love that. Yeah, it's a great explanation. I love the analogy of the soda going flat because, like you pointed out, most people can understand that. So that's pretty interesting. I will say, however, I don't want people to confuse that analogy with thinking that hydrogen-rich water is carbonated. It's not.
No.
It's, you know what I mean? It's like what I love. I mean, I basically do it every single morning. And thanks to my manager, he's also really well versed in hydrogen and a lot of the things that you and I have been talking about. He was the one that encouraged me to use aluminum with my thermos, and it has a flip top. It's not completely closed off because it's kind of hard to do that. I'd have to wrap something around it, but it is very much contained. And I just drop the stone. There's a stone at the end of it.
Yeah.
Into my bottle. I take it out of the refrigerator. I run it for 10 or 15 minutes, the generator, and then I drink it almost right away. It feels good. It's very hydrating. And one of the things I notice for people who are concerned or curious is that it's almost like a diuretic in a way. because I end up having to pee quite frequently in the morning, and I feel like that is another indication that something's happening. If I drink regular water, like, and I'm talking regular water that is clean, that is, structured and has electrolytes in it and things like that. But comparing that to my hydrogen water, like, it's literally night and day. I mean, it's a huge difference. I don't have to go and pee as often. And so this is something I want people to understand, something's
Yes,
working.
no, yeah, man. Like, absolutely. Hydrogen, acts on the nephron cells within the kidneys, and can actually enhance their function. And so this is something that has been shown and been seen anecdotally. And there's also studies that kind of reference this as well, that hydrogen can enhance kind of like the detoxification processes of the body. And I'm not talking about detoxing in kind of the most kind of like kind of the ways that's kind of pitched online. I'm talking about how your body actually manages getting rid of toxic substances, things that it doesn't want in there. Like hydrogen upregulates phase 2, phase 3, and phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 detoxification enzymes, such as like glutathione, S transferase, and things like that. And so cytochrome 4p50, these are all different kind of detoxification enzymes. Hydrogen can regulate all this stuff. And so what people end up noticing as a possibility of why they end up peeing more is that, one, they're actually filtering their body better, and two, hydrogen's acting on the kidneys. And so they notice that they end up peeing more. It is really common. I know it. I notice it well. Like, when I'm drinking hydrogen water and I'm upping my levels for, let's say, whatever reason, obviously you're gonna pee more because you're drinking more water. But also there's just a difference. There's a difference that you see with hydrogen rich water compared to normal water. And so yeah, this does anecdotally speak to the fact that hydrogen probably is actually acting on people's kidneys.
Thank you for that. And that does help to answer some of those questions that, I've talked about with a few of my clients, because whenever I'm experimenting with these things, quote unquote biohacking, when I'm hacking and I'm trying to learn how different things work, one of the things that I think a lot of people appreciate about me is that I try to talk about, or at least mention, what to expect. We obviously are all different. We all have different makeup, and our bodies act and perform very differently. Mm-hmm. However, whenever I point out something like, oh, just be mindful that you might have to pee a lot more often, when that does occur with someone, they remember that and they go, you know what? I'm glad that I talked with Josh. I'm glad I listened to this episode. I'm glad that, whatever. And then it keeps them coming back, because we can become trusted sources in this world of misinformation and quite frankly, the paradox of choice with so much information out there. Like, who do you go to for all things health and wellness? And so my hope is that a lot of people come here, and I hope to send more people to you, because when it comes to the different devices, the reason why you have all those machines behind you is not to look cool, but it's because you've tested all of them, right?
Yeah. So, yeah. So now to get in kind of to the product category, yes, I have tested many different products, well over 100 different products in the market easily, and investigated widespread the different types of technology, hydrogen water technology, hydrogen gas inhalation technologies, and just been able to investigate them. And so there are misconceptions, and there are pros and cons to every technology. So that's true of water ionizers. That's true of hydrogen water bottles. That is true of countertop hydrogen water systems. There are always going to be pros and cons. They excel in some things, and they have limitations in others. And so let's just say, for example, we can say for example, hydrogen water bottles. Okay. So hydrogen water bottles have become really popular over the last year or so. It's funny, because I've been testing hydrogen water bottles for over the last 8 years. And so it's so interesting, because I actually was able to work and do some private consulting with a company that was one of the first companies to bring hydrogen water bottles into the United States. So So I can legitimately say that I was part of the team that helped pioneer hydrogen water bottles into the US, and been testing them, like I said, been testing them for a long time. But now they're everywhere, right? You know, everywhere you look, you see hydrogen water bottles. So hydrogen water bottles basically have two forms of two technologies that they use. One's called PM, right? Or basically a PM bottle. And this PEM stands for proton exchange membrane. Sometimes you'll see SPE, which stands for solid polymer electrolyte. It's referring to the membrane within the bottle. And then you have AWI bottles, basically alkaline water ionizer bottles, right? These bottles you should never buy. Never buy alkaline ionized water bottles. Save your money and save your time, because these bottles were kind of somewhat of the original technology that was used to produce hydrogen-rich bottles. They're really kind of like a older technology that ultimately ends up producing contaminants in the water, such as like ozone and chlorine, and they produce things like hydrogen peroxide, just a host of different other things that can contaminate your drinking water. And so never use those. But proton exchange membranes, or PM bottles, there are basically what you would call high concentration hydrogen water bottles and low concentration hydrogen water bottles, when it comes to these particular bottles that are behind me. And what you will want to aim for a lot of times is buying the high concentration hydrogen water bottles that's been verified, right? Verified by a third party source like H2Hub. There's also another organization called H2 Analytics. They do performance testing on some bottles or products, hydrogen water products, because if they don't have a high concentration, the overall dose you're going to receive, which is like a milligram dose from the bottle, is going to be pretty low. And so now this is where we get into some of the implications of what does the research have to say about how much hydrogen gas do humans need to take to get the benefits. And this is where I'll talk about pros and cons. So hydrogen water bottles can be good for convenience, right? So you can have a bottle, put some water in, run it for 10 minutes, and then drink it, and you think you're good. But when it comes to an overall dose, they typically, for many years, I was not fond of them because they did not give you a very good milligram dose per serving whenever you're drinking the bottle. And so from the research, 1 to 3 milligrams per day via water has been shown to induce therapeutic effects in humans. And the more, or the higher the dose, typically the greater the effect. And so if you can get more than 1 to 3 milligrams per day via your water of hydrogen gas, then then it's going to be more preferable. So an ordinary hydrogen water bottle is typically going to hold something between 7 ounces to 10 ounces of water, and a high concentration is going to be anywhere between 3 to 6 milligrams per liter ppm, right? If you run the numbers on this, that's basically going to be dissolving somewhere between 0.5 milligram to over 1 milligram of hydrogen gas within the water, which is great because that means you can drink 3 of these bottles per day, and you can get 3 milligrams of hydrogen gas into your body with a high concentration hydrogen water bottle. But that's not the same thing for a low concentration hydrogen water bottle, right? And so at some point, it's just going to become ridiculous, because if you have to make 15 bottles in a day to get 3 milligrams, then it's no longer convenient. Mm-hmm. It's no longer serving that purpose. And so this is where studying and coming to know, like looking at my videos, right? So there's a video that I have that's basically called the problems with hydrogen water bottles. I go through everything. It's a 30-minute comprehensive breakdown video on hydrogen water bottles. And it gives you everything you would need to know about hydrogen water bottles, how they work, how to actually calculate your dose from a hydrogen water bottle. It talks about the types of hydrogen water bottles. It talks about my organization, other organizations that actually either certify or verify products before you buy any of these hydrogen water bottles, because they're notorious also for marketing concentrations that are not actually accurate to the bottles. So
I have this video up, by the way. So there's this one, which is episode 70 on your H2 minutes episodes,
Mm-hmm.
and then it looks like there's one right after it as well, which I guess would be 71,
Yes.
and
Yes.
that's this one.
Yes. And that's that one. And I go into what marketers don't tell you. So I go into the actual, some of the misconceptions around hydrogen water bottles, and what companies aren't saying. And so I go and I break down I actually have it broken down into particular topics that I basically cover in that video. And so ultimately, if you go to my website too, for those who are watching the video, I actually have a page on my website to help you calculate your H2 dose. So basically like when you go over to About Us, hover down, you see H2 calculators. When you go to H2 calculators, the first calculator you're going to see is how many milligrams of H2 did I drink, right? That's your dose. What is the dose of H2 that I drink? So the dose is basically the formula for calculating your dose is the concentration times the volume of water will give you your dose. But I make it easy for you because all you have to do is go to this calculator and you can put in a concentration. So for example, you can put in and say the ppm is 1.6 milligrams per liter. And then you can put in 0.25, which would be, let's say, 250 milliliters would be kind of one of the smaller sizes of a hydrogen water bottle. That probably converts to something close to around 6 ounces or so. And then you'll see the actual milligram dose you're going to get is 0.4 milligrams. So basically with that concentration, you can see that you're kind of under, with one serving, you're kind of under the minimum therapeutic dose that we kind of see that we want to target, or the suggested dose that you see for humans. It's kind of that 0.5. So basically you're a little under that, right? With that, but you can see that in real time. You can plug in these numbers once you know exactly what your bottle makes, and you can see what your dose is. And then now it just makes it easy because now you're just counting your bottles throughout the day.
So I usually do 20 ounces, which would be 0.59
Yeah.
or 0.6. So then I would go 0.6 on this, right?
Yes, 0.6.
So that gets me well above the.
Yes, so you're getting about a milligram of H2 every time you drink one of those bottles.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's awesome. So I didn't realize this, so thanks for sharing that. But for those of you that are listening and for watching, I'm on h2hub.com. Hub is with 2 B's. And then there's in the About Us section, you can go to the H2 calculator, and you can go in here and print, put that out. But there's also this, right, which is the H2 Blue, which
H2 Blue
is a dissolved hydrogen test reagent. And maybe you could talk on that a bit.
Yeah. So basically, this is the only verified. There's another brand called Miz H2 drops. It's also based out of Japan. I don't know if they're still on the market, but H2 Blue is the go-to best verified hydrogen test reagent that's on the market, right? And so you can use this test reagent to confirm your hydrogen concentration at home. But I think the thing you have to keep in mind when it comes to H2 Blue is that H2 Blue is more of an art than a science. It takes practice and technique to actually do the test rightly. And this is why, this is why I have on my YouTube channel a video to tell you how to use H2 Blue. And so, because if you don't use it properly, you can skew your results significantly. And in fact, companies have done this. They will put the wrong volume of water they'll put the wrong volume of water in the graduated beaker and fill it up higher than what you're supposed to, and it'll make the hydrogen concentration look higher than what it actually is. And so this is why I think it's important to understand that if you're going to be using H2 Blue, that you need to do multiple tests. You need to figure out the best way your bottle works to ensure you're testing it properly. So if you're going to test like a hydrogen water bottle, you need to fill it up to the bottom of the threads. You need to make sure you have a good seal on the bottle, so you're not losing any hydrogen gas when you're actually running your bottle. You need to perform the test pretty quickly right after it's done, because hydrogen escapes rapidly from the water. And then and then you need to make sure that you're not over stirring, like you're not over mixing the reagent in the water, because all you're going to do is stir the water. You're going to stir the hydrogen gas right out of the water. And so that's why it's really important to kind of have an understanding of not just how to use H2 Blue, but the proper ways to go about it with the technology that you have.
So I'm showing this video. There's two on your list here. There's episode 43 and episode 44. For those that want to go back, maybe you're taking notes, but Tywon shows you exactly how to use H2 Blue. And it's, what is it, about 17 and a half minutes on the first one. The next one is 11 minutes. And it should help you to fully understand how to use it. But I think if this is important to you and you truly care, then follow along and, you can see how it works. But one of the things that I think most people want to walk away from is knowing, okay, what is, the best way to consume molecular hydrogen or get hydrogen, the most amount of benefits. And when I ask myself that, I'm one that likes to stack the hacks, right? So, one of the things that I didn't get a chance to film yet, but I will soon. My cold plunge has been acting up. But one of the things that you and I talked about before recording, and so it was actually what prompted this conversation in the first place, is the fact that I heard Gary Brecka talking on Joe Rogan's podcast about molecular hydrogen infusion with cold plunging, since most people are cold plunging nowadays or doing some kind of water bath therapy. Like, we may as well try to benefit from the use of molecular hydrogen as well, hydrogen gas. And this is something I had been doing for years. I'm going to try to see if I could find some old videos, but my manager and I, we had these very antiquated, huge cells, these precious metal cells that, like you were talking about earlier, with the diode and the what is it called, the anode and the diode?
Right? So
like
it's called the cathode and the anode.
There you go, cathode and anode, and you have to like switch the charge and do all these things. And we used to put that thing connected to a car battery. We would put that thing in water. People thought we were crazy, but I used to travel on tour with this thing because I understood the benefits of molecular hydrogen in a bath. And, it's very relaxing. A lot of times people kind of feel very relaxed or maybe even fall asleep, depending on what you're dealing with. But then I would also maximize that, because I'd be traveling. I was maximizing that with hydrogen tablets and a water generator, one of the small ones. And then, of course, I came across all this information about how, like, they don't, like, the water generators, like you touched on, they don't last as long as we think. And so then I got caught up in the whole, like, measuring it. And then I thought, okay, maybe I should just invest into a countertop generator, which I have. And this was from a company called Vital Reaction. But I know you and I both are very connected with Q Life. And I also found, because this made my life a lot easier, if people understood how big those cells were that I was carrying around with connected to a car battery and like jumper cables, people would think like I'm carrying a bomb. And that was hard to travel with, obviously. So when I came across the Q Spa, the hydrogen bath generator, I was like, this is amazing. And I'll share that real quick, and then maybe we can touch on the bath. And because what I do is I kind of combine it all. So I'm going to have some video that comes out with it, but it's basically, I do cold plunge, but I don't make the water as cold as I normally would doing a cold plunge, because I can probably stay in there at 40 degrees Fahrenheit, which is cold, stay in there for about 5 to 7 minutes typically. But if I want to get the benefits of of hydrogen for a lot longer, then I will change the temperature to somewhere around 50 degrees Fahrenheit, stay in there for approximately 20 minutes. We've already heard from you that the hydrogen solubility is much greater at a colder temperature. So 50 degrees is pretty good. It's colder than room temperature water. But then I stack that not only with the hydrogen infusion with the Q-Spa, but I also use the inhalation device, and I drink the hydrogen water, and what else? Yeah, so it's the bath generator, drinking the water, and inhaling the gas all at the same time. That's what I want to talk about. And I'm going to pop this up, and you can maybe touch on that a little bit, but I'm going to share this on the screen so people can see what I mean. So this is qlifetoday.com. And they're sponsors of this show, by the way, or this episode. So shout out to Q Life and all that they're doing. You and I both have their systems, of course. I don't have the H2 Hydrate. It's definitely something on my wish list for sure. But I have the H2 Respire, which is a clinical grade pure H2 and Brown's gas inhalation machine. And then there's another step down here with the H2 Respire 150. But they also have the Q Cup. So I actually used to have I have two of these just kind of sitting in my cabinets. I don't use that nearly as much. I have the tablets. I have two of these the H2 Keep containers. But this is the Q Spa that I was talking about. Oh, I do also have the Q Mister, which is pretty cool. I think this is really fun. I used to use this with my kids whenever, like during the summer months, it was really hot. I would spray this on myself, and my kids would be like, "Papa, I want it." And so I would spray it in their faces. They not even realizing that they're getting, the benefits of molecular hydrogen. But here's the Q Spa really quick. And this is what I'm talking about. So you pop this into your tub, whether you have a cold plunge or your regular bathtub, and then you can use one of these molecular hydrogen devices to measure the saturation of hydrogen, which is pretty cool. And it's pretty simple. You've got a carrying bag. This is quite small. It's about the size of, a large hand. And you just pop that into the tub, turn it on, let it run for 20 minutes. And, you've got hydrogen happening while you're hanging out in your tub. So yeah, it's really cool. This is one of the things I wanted to show. And then also quickly, which one is the bath? Oh, here it is. So this is what you would use for the tub. So you can just take this. There's a little cable that comes off that you can then drop into the tub, or you can use it to inhale. So I use this for the inhalation. Another device I have, you can also use it it has the stone on the end of it. You can drop that into the tub if you want. But I know you had mentioned there's another device on your site that you like to use in terms of the what do you call that? The infusion method?
Yes. Yes. So basically, So basically that other device I was talking about is more of a large scale system that is able to infuse hydrogen gas into a larger volume of water, than probably what Q Life can. But it doesn't mean that Q Life is not going to be able to be suitable for most people when it comes to an average size bathtub at home or something like that.
And price, right? Because
yes, yes, price. Yeah. I was going to say these larger scale bath systems are expensive, and we actually have one that's probably going to be coming at the end of this year that is very expensive. It's very, very expensive, but that's for later on in the year.
We might have to have you come back on and talk about that, because obviously, does a person need to do all the things that I'm doing to get the most amount of molecular hydrogen into the body, or hydrogen gas into the body? No.
Yeah.
But if a person is curious and maybe they're going through something, like maybe they're dealing with Parkinson's or some kind of inflammatory process, a lot of the diseases of today are stemmed from inflammatory disease, right? And so it's like, if we understand that inflammation is at the root of most diseases today, then I would think it would behoove a person to hear that and then do something about the inflammation, that what we call systemic inflammation or even acute inflammation.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I know that you and I both talked about before we started recording is, you had a situation in which you burned your finger, or your fingers, 3 of your fingers. You were doing some work on the car, you burned your fingers, and you showed the trajectory and the response time in which you went from having huge burn blisters to then nothing. And I think it was
Yeah.
like 3 days, if I remember
Yeah.
correctly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Basically 3 to 4 days. It went from probably a second degree burn, horrible blisters, to no blisters in about 4 days.
Yeah, and it's something similar to me. Mine wasn't a burn blister, because of a burn blister, I've had that before. Those suck. And a lot of people,
Yeah.
they go and run cold water on it or cool water. They put butter on it. They do all these different things.
Mhm.
Now I'm like, get your hydrogen generator, get hydrogen in the body, drink the hydrogen, and then use it topically as well. Being that the molecules, or the hydrogen gas is so small, the molecules, I guess it's correct in calling it a molecule, right?
Yep.
But
Yep.
the molecule is so small that it easily permeates the skin. And so this is what I think people need to understand, is that, if you've got something like a burn or something you're trying to deal with, whether, like, for instance, with me, I went rucking, which is basically a heavy backpack hike.
Mhm.
I went rucking for like 6.5 miles one day, and I had improper socks on, and I had a new pair of shoes that I was testing out foolishly. It was very hot, and I noticed halfway through the walk that I was developing a blister, and I was like, man, by the time I got home, I was expecting to see one of those blister pads developing on the bottom of my foot. And even though I didn't see the blister developing yet, I was like, okay, let me just kind of keep an eye out on it, make sure that I, don't let it develop into a big blister. Woke up the next morning, I could start to see that big blister developing on the forefoot of my
Mhm.
foot. And I was like, oh man, well, I remembered I had the Q spa. I got a bucket out, put the Q spa in it, put the foot in there, and literally in one day, it went from this development of a big blister on the bottom of my foot to literally no blister.
Yeah.
And then 2 days later, it was as if there was nothing even happened. No sensitivity there. And I'm like, 2 days. I literally did 2 soaks on the first day and 1 soak on the second day. That's it. Three soaks.
Uh-huh.
That's it. So
Yeah. Oh man.
yeah.
I mean, yeah. For me, like with my little burn blisters that I had on my fingers, they were on these 3 fingers. And like, there's a video I actually have showing this that you guys can all go watch as well. And I kind of go through it all. But yeah, like, I've had tremendous effects with hydrogen, with regulating my immune system, as far as like seasonal allergies and things like this. I mean, I had terrible seasonal allergies growing up. And basically where my eyes would be basically glued shut every morning, and Benadryl didn't scratch it. You know what I mean? It didn't even touch it. And so it's like, one of the effects I had with hydrogen was just when I started consuming hydrogen-rich water regularly, like my seasonal allergies diminished drastically, like 80% or more, almost to the point to now they're just non-existent. And so I was like, I've had effects like that, but nothing as rapid and as profound as how fast hydrogen gas went to heal my fingers. And so this is also have some, there's some data that corresponds to this in the scientific research, showing that hydrogen can activate stem cells. Hydrogen can increase the healing rate by 3 times. And there's like in skin tissue, there's one particular study that talks about this, how it kind of can regulate extracellular matrix and increase type 1 and type 2 collagen synthesis. And so hydrogen can do a lot of different things. And so to see it happen in real time is one thing to have the study say it, it's another thing to experience it. And I was like, wow, that's insane to have it be this rapid. Because hydrogen, by definition, how hydrogen works, hydrogen is what's called like a gaseous signal modulator. So that means hydrogen functions like a signaling molecule. So it's just a simple, it's a technical way of basically saying hydrogen regulates different cellular processes. And because since it regulates different cellular processes, it can regulate different tissue processes, which, and also has effects on organ processes, right? Now you have whole organ systems. And so this is where some people like what you talked about with someone earlier, like when they might be breathing hydrogen gas, they get sleepy. Well, that's because hydrogen can actually reduce the stress on the sympathetic nervous system, right? So there's things that it's reducing inflammation on like the nervous system itself. And so hydrogen's distinctive and kind of like therapeutic effects lend itself to what we're actually experiencing with being healed, because hydrogen basically regulates oxidative stress in the body, or it decreases oxidative stress in the body. Hydrogen can have profound effects on inflammation. That is whether systemically or locally. There's been shown effects for hydrogen regulating like master regulators of like inflammation, like NF kappa B or tumor necrosis factor alpha, interleukin 6. These are all cytokines or inflammatory mediators that our body uses to to uh, to basically to basically cause or to upregulate inflammation in the body. And so hydrogen can actually downregulate these. It can upregulate anti-inflammatory cytokines such as interleukin 22, interleukin 4, interleukin 10. These are all anti-inflammatory cytokines or proteins that are in our body. So hydrogen is regulating all these different things, as well as being able to regulate cellular death and cellular viability, right? And so they've seen this in the cancer models as well, where hydrogen can actually increase the length of telomeres in healthy cells. And the telomeres is like the end caps of our DNA. Basically, you can look at telomeres, and the length of them kind of can tell you how old a cell is, or how viable the cell is going to be, or how its longevity. And so hydrogen actually can increase the length of telomeres in healthy cells, but actually decrease the length of telomeres in cancer cells. And so, there's differentiating effects. So hydrogen's having regulatory effects on cellular viability and longevity. And so, across the board, if you can help in all three categories, right? If you can help with, regulating or reducing oxidative stress, which has feedback loops into inflammation, right? There's this bidirectional effect with inflammation. Inflammation increases oxidative stress. Oxidative stress activates inflammation. If you can handle those two things, and then you can handle the life viability of a cell, you can affect a ton of things in the human body. And as you mentioned earlier, hydrogen is the smallest molecule in the universe. Therefore, it can get anywhere in your body because it's the smallest and lightest and is neutral in its charge. This means it can diffuse all human barriers. So the blood-brain barrier, the placenta barrier, the testis barrier, the intestinal barrier, the air gap barrier in your lungs, all barriers in the human body, hydrogen can diffuse through, like at the fastest rate that we know of. And so it can get even into the subcellular compartments of our cells, even all the way into the nucleus. And so this is where we see how hydrogen has different, actual like effects on protecting DNA and RNA, and the whole process of reducing stress on the endoplasmic reticulum, all kind of crazy different things that's going on in our cells. Hydrogen can get places where other beneficial molecules can't. And so because of this is why I said earlier that I feel like molecular hydrogen in general is probably one of the most important therapeutic agents we've ever discovered, if not the most important.
Mic drop.
Yeah.
Mic drop. I mean, I don't think it could get more clear than that. Thank you for that. I mean, it's like if a person, because look, we're nearing 2 hours, so we clearly can just keep going because we haven't even really.
Yeah, man. And yeah, man. And I like we were like, yeah, and I do need to talk about the bath stuff too. So I definitely want to make sure I touch on that before we end this
Yeah.
part.
Yeah. Like for those that are watching and listening, we're going to have this segmented in different chapters so that you can kind of scroll to the areas that you want to hear. If you have still been listening and watching this whole time, bless you. I hope that you get something good out of this. And we will offer, because Tywon and I both are affiliates with Q Life, and we have other different affiliate connections, and these are things that are vetted by each of us, right? And so, like, use that because it helps us to continue to put more awareness out there, like what Tywon is doing today and what I try to do all the time with this show. But let's touch on that, right? And so,
Yes.
if you're watching and you're listening, we're about to wrap up, but we want to make sure that we get some of the main pieces touched on before we finish.
Yeah. So back to the hydrogen bath concept with Q Life and stacking, or whether or not you can do it individually. So, or basically like administer, let's say, or give yourself hydrogen rich water, or, like breathe hydrogen gas, whatever. So yes, all administration methods of hydrogen has been shown to induce therapeutic effects within humans. And the cool part about this is that because of how it enters the body, like I said earlier, there's distinctive yet related therapeutic effects. And so your idea of stacking is not an actual bad one. It actually can be found within scientific literature as a possible way of actually doing hydrogen therapy. Because if you think about it this way, drinking hydrogen-rich water and doing a cold plunge and breathing at the same time, there's going to be maybe localized effects that you're going to have on your intestines. So, for example, hydrogen gas can increase what's called butyrate producing bacteria. And butyrate is a short chain fatty acid that has all kinds of wonderful benefits for you, such as anti-inflammatory effects, has neuroprotective effects, has all kind of good benefits for you. It also upregulates another awesome short chain fatty acid called propionate. But it also is going to be reducing stress, reducing stress on your gut microbiome, right? And so you're going to have all these secondary they're basically going to be called secondary messengers. All these indirect effects from when you drink the hydrogen rich water is going to go out through your body and get benefits that way, right? And then it's also going to get. Go ahead.
Yeah, one second, because this is important. I think I'm glad you touched on the hydrogen effect of butyrate in the gut, because I did a while back. I did a gut analysis test called Vitract, and I had the young lady from Vitract. I had her on my show twice, actually. The first time was just talking about the test. The second time was literally going over the test in real time. And she was shocked because up to that point, she had never seen someone score off the charts with butyrate in their gut.
That's funny.
Like I literally was off the charts. Like, it was maximized on butyrate levels.
Yeah.
And they say that that's a really, really good thing. And I didn't associate it with me being someone that consumes hydrogen, molecular hydrogen gas, right? So I think that's interesting that you touched on that. And then she said one of the caveats, however, though, is I have so much butyrate in my gut that I also consequently had the lowest amount of Akkermansia that they've seen, right? Which is a beneficial compound. So I now supplement with Akkermansia. I still take my hydrogen, of course, but I want to do a retest and see if it's maybe balanced out a little bit. But yes, butyrate is important. And it looks like hydrogen is probably one of the main reasons why I have so much.
Yeah. No, I mean, no, no. So there's a lot of research on hydrogen for the benefits of the gut, regulating the gut microbiome, and actually the gut composition. So the ratio of, let's say, anaerobic bacteria to aerobic bacteria, it's pretty remarkable, to the point to where certain researchers are actually saying H2 may be a master regulator of our gut microbiome. And so, yes, because you can shift it from producing methane to producing hydrogen, and hydrogen is obviously shown to have all these wonderful benefits. And most people don't even realize that when they're actually eating their fiber-rich foods, they're like non-digestible carbohydrates, these bacteria produce hydrogen gas. And so this is one of the ways that they're actually seeing researchers showing that you not only get benefits from eating your fruits and vegetables because of all the different beneficial antioxidants and things that are in them, but also because you up your H2 levels, because about 14% of the hydrogen gas that you produce in your intestines actually diffuses into systemic circulation, and it forms your basal level of hydrogen gas. So most of us already are producing some levels of hydrogen gas, and you're going to have 1 to 5 micromolars, probably micromolars per liter of hydrogen gas in your blood. And if you were to take a breath test, you're actually going to have some hydrogen gas coming out of your breath, especially after you eat a good meal, a good, well-rounded meal. And so I say all this to say, yeah, so when you drink hydrogen-rich water, you're going to have those kind of benefits that can happen on your gut and then go to your liver and all this kind of stuff. But then you're also going to be breathing hydrogen gas, and breathing hydrogen gas has been shown to elevate hydrogen gas systemically throughout your entire body, saturate your body at a level that hydrogen water cannot, right? And so, for example, when you're breathing hydrogen gas, let's say you're going to use, let's say we're using like the H2 Respire 1000. It produces 660 milliliters per minute based on our testing, and that translates to a inhaled H2 concentration. So like inhaled H2 concentration when you're using a nasal cannula, that's going to translate to about a 4% inhaled H2 concentration. We see in scientific studies that 1 to 4% hydrogen inhalation, or the concentration that you breathe, induces therapeutic effects in humans, right? And so a way that you can kind of understand this too, I don't want to gloss over this so quickly that people don't understand what I'm talking about, 1 to 4%. So when we're breathing, right, we exchange obviously air with each breath. And over the course of a minute at rest, we typically exchange between 4 to 6 liters of air. This is called gas exchange. And this forms what's called our ventilation minute. So how much air are we ventilating in a minute? Typically that's between 4 to 6 liters at rest. And so of that 4 to 6 liters at rest, 1 to 4% of it needs to be H2 to get the benefits, 1 to 4% of it or more, right? This is kind of what we see. And so when you're breathing from like the when you're breathing from the Respire 1000, you're basically, for an average male, right? Everyone's breathing dynamics is going to be slightly different, but for an average male, it's going to be close to around 4% H2. And that, in the course of about 20 minutes, we see studies typically 20, 30 minutes. If you do that, you're going to saturate your body completely, brain to your feet with hydrogen gas. That is different than what we see with hydrogen-rich water. And so because of that, you can actually get beneficial, effects in the brain and other parts of your body that you necessarily might not get in the same way with hydrogen-rich water. So they've actually seen that when you do hydrogen inhalation and hydrogen water together, there's been studies on this, that they can have synergistic effects with each other because they're regulating different systems differently, right? And so you can actually have synergistic effects and have a greater effect totally systemically on gene expression, regulating more beneficial pathways in your body, systemically doing them together than doing them separate. And so by stacking, like you're talking about doing, you can get systemic effects, local effects, and then even what you're talking about, topical effects, right? So when you're soaking in a bath, right, your biggest organ is your skin. You know what I'm saying? So it's like hydrogen can, one, like you said, it can diffuse all human barriers. So it can diffuse right through the skin barrier. But it can also get into like the localized tissue, right? So, muscle groups really well when you're doing topical things. And so this is where you see hydrogen bath studies for things like psoriasis or dermatitis or things like this, for muscle soreness, or like, let's say you sprain an ankle, like they'll do hydrotherapy with hydrogen gas in it, right? And they'll soak. And this is really good to increase those levels topically higher than you can do with breathing or drinking. Because when you drink hydrogen-rich water, only about 1% of the hydrogen gas that you drink is going to make it to your skin, and your skin has a pretty large surface area. So hydrogen water might not be the best for skin conditions by getting hydrogen gas directly to let's say those particular areas, but it can still be good by regulating inflammation in your body, right? And so I think when you're doing a stack effect, I think you're going to have potential of getting greater benefits in totality than if you were to do them separate. And that's kind of what the research is suggesting. And so I think as far as hydrogen baths go, I think when it comes to cold plunges, like with you, I think it's a great idea to go ahead and put both of your Q spas in that cold plunge, run them for 20 minutes to allow them to be able to dissolve hydrogen gas closer to the therapeutic level. And then when you hop in your cold plunge, to go ahead and push the Q spa again. And that way you're now actually soaking, breathing, and drinking hydrogen-rich water at the same time while while like basically doing a cold plunge, which is a hermetic, stress kind of therapy, right? And so you're going to basically end up basically increasing the resilience of your body while you're doing so. But hydrogen can have synergistic effects with hermetic therapies such as cold plunges or like HBOT or different things like that. Like hydrogen can enhance the what we see in the literature right now is hydrogen seems to be able to enhance or even work synergistically with the oxidative therapies or hormetic therapies.
I love that. I wanted to show you one thing before we wrap up
Uh-huh.
because this is taking that stack even to another level. Not sure if you've had any experience with this device, but knowing you probably do. But I posted this pretty cheeky reel on Instagram and on
Mm-hmm.
Facebook to kind of encourage people to reach out to give their ideas of what they think this is. So I'm going to play this real quick and see if you know this.
Yeah.
I better turn that off because I don't know if it's going to get flagged. But you see that? Okay, so I posted that for a reason. I literally just said on the post or asked on the post, "Do you know what this is?" And a lot of people had no clue. I put the Mary Jane music in the background to make them think that I'm like smoking cannabis or something like
Yeah, yeah,
that,
yeah. Uh-huh.
and that's not. But that is a molecular hydrogen inhalation device. Have you ever used one of those? Do you know that
Yes,
one?
yeah, yeah, no, yes, yes. So yes, I do know what that product is. It's from Aquabank in Japan. But yes, yeah. So that is what would be called a hydrogen inhaler or a inhaler device. Basically, like similar to you just taking a deep breath with hydrogen gas. And so there's some efficacy issues with that product as far
One
as
second. One
good.
second. I just wanted to. I wanted to grab the actual device because
Yeah, no
I
problem.
figure so. This brand that I have is Kinkos.
Kimco.
Kinkos
Yep.
4.
Yep.
Yeah,
Kimco's from Aquabank.
yeah. So yeah, I know you know it, and I know there's some issues with it, but I do want to hear your thoughts. So I turn this bad boy on. People can see that, right? And then when I get it going, you see that it goes blue and it starts to do the electrolysis or whatever it's supposed to do. I would assume this is similar to the one you said before with like the fact that it's similar to the alkaline devices, I think, right?
Oh yeah, no, no, no. Yeah, basically, that device is going to have like a little PEM membrane in it, and is going to be producing hydrogen gas. So it should be pure hydrogen, if I'm not mistaken. And then it's going to be producing around 8 milliliters per minute of H2. And the primary issue with that is just the low production volume of the hydrogen gas. So in other words, it'll probably be better, let's say, hypothetically speaking, there's not a whole lot of evidence to support 8 milliliters per minute of inhaled H2 that's going to give you much benefits.
Right.
You could basically probably make a case for something localized, like in the tissues around your mouth or where you're inhaling. But to saturate or to get levels in your body, as far as in your blood and your plasma, elevated to the type of levels that we see in scientific literature, is you would have to be sucking on that thing, bro, all day. And so
Pause.
yeah, pause, right? I was trying to think about. I said that, homie. I was like, wait a minute. Yeah, but yeah, bro. Yeah, man. You would have to definitely be breathing on there all day, bro. Yeah, yeah. To be able to get the type of levels that we see in the scientific literature, uh, because we just have such large gas exchange. That's what I'm saying when I say 4 to 6 liters of air, right?
Yeah.
Like 4 to 6 liters of air. Like, to put it into perspective, I want everybody to think of 2 liter cans or 2 liter bottles of pop, right? Take three of those. That's how much air you're exchanging in like a minute, in 60 seconds, right?
Yeah.
Like now, 8 milliliters per minute, right? That's 8 milliliters in a minute. So compared to 6 liters, you're talking about some crazy small percentage. It's going to be considerably less than, let's say, that 1 to 4% that we see in the studies. So that would be the issue with that device. Would be one, how do they constitute it, or like how does it compare to the scientific literature, and how do you justify the effects? And so they actually, like I said, I've talked with that company several times. I've even went over some of this stuff with that company, and so this is just this would be one of the issues with a product like that. And I think this is important, why organizations like mine exist, or individuals like me exist, so that people can navigate through that, because not everybody readily has that kind of information, right? So
100%.
you know what I
And I
mean?
must say this to piggyback on what you're saying. I love that the way you explained it. I also am like you. Like, I have all these tools, and does everything I own work amazingly and I use it all the time? Hell no. But what's cool
Yeah.
about this is that, like, if you understand that this alone is not going to get you to the therapeutic effects we're talking about, but if you're using it in a stacking version, because, if I'm doing the cold plunge and I'm doing the 2Q spas, and I've drank some molecular hydrogen, and I'm doing the inhalation through the nose with the H2 Respire 1000, doing this is the only other orifice that I need to really focus on, right? Because I could do this just to look cool, to feel cool. It also has that little vitamin infusion pod with it. So it just maybe makes your session a little bit more, relaxing, possibly. But don't think that this alone is going to get you to the therapeutic effect. This stacked with some other things might be cool if you have the means and you want to try it, So
Straight up.
cool. All right. So we are definitely hitting the 2-hour mark. So I want to make sure that we didn't miss anything else that you really wanted to talk about. Obviously, I'm going to have you come back on. I have a feeling that people are going to be super interested in making sure that their stuff is set up the way it needs to be. I'm going to make sure to give you time to tell people where to go if we haven't, done that enough already. But is there anything else that you really wanted to talk about on today's show before we start to wrap up?
Yeah, man. I think the only thing I would share, and I tend to share this often, especially in my private consultings that I even do with companies as well as individuals. And I'll probably make a video on this in the future, but it gets into how hydrogen works. And so, because hydrogen is what I said earlier, is a gas signal modulator that regulates different processes in the body, different metabolic pathways. This means hydrogen's effects are pretty much through alterations of gene expression, and that takes time. And so what people need to know is that one particular session of hydrogen gas might not have, or will not have, based on what we see on the studies, the same effects of repeated bouts over time. And this is because molecular hydrogen, the way it regulates the body and basically how it functions as a therapeutic agent, is not akin to what we see in the Western culture of pharmaceutical drugs, right? Which is all about acute therapy, which is about, you take this, you get this effect, and 30 minutes later, you notice this thing. You know what I'm saying? Hydrogen is not just interested in going in and turning off, let's say, one particular mediator like COX-2 or something. It's not like Tylenol. Goes in, turns off COX-2, or maybe Advil, turns off COX-2, and then now you got some effect. Hydrogen goes in and regulates COX-2 and, all these other different inflammatory molecules to actually regulate your immune system. So it's doing far more. And so what I'd like to tell people is that hydrogen is closer to what we see in exercise, right? Like the effects of exercise, than it would be anything like you see as a normal pharmaceutical supplement. Normal pharmaceutical drug. And so it, just like one bout of exercise is not going to get you there. And what you're looking for is the repeated bouts over time that leads to cellular adaptations and then the body changing. It's the same thing. And this is what they're actually seeing with hydrogen therapy. And so, for example, I use this this is a good study that kind of highlights this. And it was kind of a foundational study that they figured out how hydrogen is actually doing it's how it's mediating its effects. It's not just functioning like an antioxidant in the body where it just neutralizes a couple free radicals and then it's toast. Like, it was a study that was done on rheumatoid arthritis with high concentration hydrogen rich water, and they had these individuals drink high concentration hydrogen rich water. I think it's around 5 milligrams per liter in 16 ounces every day for a month. Then they did a washout period where they drank nothing but regular water, right, for a month, and then they had them consume hydrogen rich water again for another month, and then they did their actual follow up and analysis and data interpretation. And what they found is that the patients that were diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis within the first year of their diagnosis, they all went into remission. So they had their C-reactive proteins, their disease status, molecules or biomarkers they were looking at were all normalized. And what they saw was, okay, well, what's going on here? Because we had them not drinking hydrogen water during this washout period as well, but they saw that their inflammation levels were actually lower and staying the same or even decreasing. And so they were like, how is it still decreasing when hydrogen is not present? And it's because they're still getting residual effects from consuming hydrogen water from the first month. And it was still carrying over into the second month. And then they actually did it again, right? So it was the repeated bouts that led to this, basically restoring the body to homeostasis, right?
So would that information suggest then that we should cycle on and off of it, or does that suggest that we should just stick with it?
Yes. So basically, what that information suggests is that you should stick with it. There is some particular data that is out there. There's some data that suggests you can maybe desensitize yourself to hydrogen gas, just like any other particular agent. You can build a tolerance. They've seen this in a Parkinson's disease study where they actually had mice breathing hydrogen gas. And then they had mice that were constantly within a container. So basically you have mice breathing hydrogen gas or like drinking hydrogen rich water, kind of on like a daily bout session kind of thing. And then they had mice that were just constantly breathing hydrogen gas in a container. And the mice that were breathing hydrogen gas in the container like had drastic effects. It went up really quickly, and then it started to taper off. And they were like, well, what's going on? And it looked like it could be the mice were becoming desensitized, or they're building a tolerance. The cells were getting used to that level of hydrogen. And so there's some basis for this as far as maybe like, having a washout period every now and then.
But to be fair, with that level of like a mice in a container filled with hydrogen gas for any amount of period of time is never going to be possible with a human.
Never. Yeah. Yes. Never going to be possible for humans to do that. But it does kind of highlight the concept behind the tolerance or like the desensitizing, because when you think about it, this is basically highlighting two different things. It's called intermittent exposure and continual exposure of hydrogen, or constant exposure, or a low dose constant exposure of hydrogen. So intermittent exposure means basically when you drink hydrogen rich water by definition as an administration method is a transient intermittent exposure of hydrogen gas. What you're going to do when you drink it is going to go into your body and you're going to spike your blood levels and cellular levels of hydrogen. So basically, in other words, we already pretty much probably have cells that are used to a certain level of hydrogen gas based on our own diet, makeup, and just personal biology, right? So how much, and so most of us have a basal level of hydrogen in our body and we don't get any effects from that, right? It's only when you increase it that it causes favorable response and the cells respond, right? And so when you drink hydrogen water, you spike those blood levels, and basically it takes about 5 to 10 minutes for the levels to start to rise. They peak in about 20 to 30 minutes, and then in an hour, you breathe it all out. So now you're right back down to your basal level after about an hour of drinking hydrogen-rich water, right? So you have this intermittent exposure, this spike, it goes up and then comes right back down after about an hour. You repeat that a couple times a day, right? Hydrate water in the morning, hydrate water in the evening. You know what I mean? Like hydrate water in the afternoon, hydrate water in the evening. Okay, now you've had 3 kind of doses of hydrogen throughout the day, right? Where you spike your blood levels. This is kind of what we see in the scientific literature, right? This is what we're seeing with some papers. But then there's an option where you see individuals that, let's say, that want to just go crazy, or maybe even like when I first started, let's say with the Kangen water systems, where they have people drinking a gallon of hydrogen water a day, right? And unless you're an athlete and you're pushing your body, that's typically going to take people all day to consume, right? So what they're doing is they might not be realizing that they're taking a continual low dose of hydrogen throughout the day, right? They're drinking a little bit here, knock down 10 ounces, come back later, drink another one, knock down another 15 ounces, did another one. And depending on the exposure time now, okay, so now you're kind of getting over time, it's a possibility. It's not to say that we have research to say this is happening, but it's a possibility that there could be a tolerance that could be built if you did that long enough. And so this is where I would say it's important to make sure you do it. You're consuming hydrogen in the same type of way that you see in the scientific literature, which is more towards an intermittent exposure. But when it comes back to that paper, I think ultimately what it shows us is that hydrogen is regulating processes in the body and altering gene expression, and that can actually continue to take place once hydrogen is gone out of the body.
Well said.
And
Yeah,
so
well said.
you can have residual effects on your body after consuming hydrogen-rich water, right? For up to almost, we basically have data that can suggest up to 24 hours after you even consume it. So this is pretty cool to when you know this, that you're not going to be looking to get effects after 1 day, after 2 days of taking it. No, you're going to be looking at saying, how does my body feel after 3 weeks of being on hydrogen therapy? How does it feel after being on 6 weeks of hydrogen therapy? Just like, how does my body look after 3 weeks of exercise? How does my body feel after 6 weeks of exercise? How my body feel after 12 weeks of exercise, right? You're going to have this compound accumulative effect. So hydrogen is not an acute therapy. It's a progressive therapy.
Well said. There you have it. Love that. Thank you for sharing that. I'm glad that we allowed the time to do it. I know this is running longer than usual, but maybe we break this up into 2 episodes, or we just put it out there and let people like consume it, because I want this to act as a resource for all the questions about molecular hydrogen and best ways to use it and what devices. Also, this might be a really good way to encourage people to say, if we didn't address the questions you might have about your setup, your system, the way you're doing it, what is the best protocols to kind of get you into optimal ranges, then like this is maybe a good opportunity to ask us, right? Hit either one of us up. But especially, you've got now access to Tywon and H2 Hub. So you can reach out. I know that he has a huge platform that offers people to do one-on-ones with him and things like that. So like reach out. And Tywon, with that, can you let people know the best places to find you, whether it be social media, website, all that?
Yeah. So basically, the number one place would be my website, h2hub.com. And there's a contact form there. You can go ahead and just go ahead and type it in, and send us an email. My team definitely get the message off to me. And then you can also reach me on all my social media platforms. So there's H2 Minutes on Instagram, H2 Minutes on Facebook. There's H2 Hub on Instagram. There's H2 Hub on Facebook. And I think those would be kind of the primary places to get in touch with me. And then lastly, I just, for people to fully understand exactly what H2 Hub is, H2 Hub legitimately is the premier spot to shop for tested and approved hydrogen products that's been validated. And so if you're looking for hydrogen products that that you can kind of trust, and, you can kind of take not the company's word for it, but you can take a credible third party's word for it, then I think you should look at the products we've tested. Like right now, I think we have somewhere up to 30 or 40, up to 40, almost going on 50 approved hydrogen products. But we've examined many, many more. And that just gives you an indication that there are quite a few products that have not made the cut. So that means there's several products that have not met our performance standards to be recommended for consumers to purchase because the product was either not safe, did not provide therapeutic levels of hydrogen, or was not reliable.
Well, there you have it, folks. So I have the page pulled up with the different collections. I see here it's got the seal of approval, H2 Hub approved performance. So these are all products. You can see them listed there, from tablets to smaller portable water generators to the big boy bath generators and so on and so forth. So, there's a lot that you can scroll through. And again, if you have questions about what's what, like hit up Tywon, hit me up, and stay tuned. And again, I want to thank you for the listeners and the viewers for taking this much time to sit there and listen to us get to know each other and geek out on all this stuff. And if you find this interesting, if you find this fascinating, if you learn something from this, please let us know. Feel free to subscribe to Tywon's YouTube and all the things he's doing with the hub. Also, feel free to subscribe to this podcast, whether it's my personal one or the podcast Simply Walk the Talks show, and then share it, because at the end of the day, we're here to kind of share our experiences to help the world. We're trying to help people. If there's something we said that is incorrect, there's something that you think is not right, that's okay. Like, we're not here to live in an echo chamber. We're here to talk about different products. That's why I brought up this device. And I don't want people to be misled in thinking that everything I use is the most amazing thing ever. I mean, there's some things that I waste my money on. There's other things I waste my time on. And then there's a bunch of things that really are beneficial in my life. And so if you think I'm a trusted source and you believe in the people that I bring on as trusted sources, then do something with that, please. That's all I ask.
Absolutely.
Tywon, thank you for your time. Thank you for your expertise. Thank you for doing what you're doing. Keep up the good work. You are a true beacon of light in this industry, and I'm glad to know you. And I look forward to doing a lot more with you, brother. So
yeah, man. Hey, Josh, thank you for having me on, man. I mean, whatever, like, it's a pleasure being here, and it's always a wonderful thing to be able to share hydrogen with others, whether it's information or even helping them find products or anything like that. I really do believe that H2 in the future is going to be a foundational therapy akin to sleep, good sleep, exercise, drinking water, things like that. And so I don't think there's anything more important that I could do other than sharing my faith, probably, that I could do probably than just sharing hydrogen with other people. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to do so, and basically leveraging your platform for that.
Much appreciated. And a final shout out to Q Life. Again, Q Life has been very incremental and integral as a part of this whole episode that we did today. I mean, they've been really amazing in making sure we're both set up. They connected us. So another huge shout out to them as well. So shout out to Q Life. Thank you for all that you do. And until next time, this is Josh signing out from Simply Walk the Talk. Peace.
Yeah, doses.
Walk the talk, talking facts. Move like me, but I move a little fast. Make my move, here to last. Fasten these seat belts, I'm coming past. Take care of me, longevity. Hack my biology, better believe. Walking the talk, soul, mind, and body connected. Better come give us a listen. Better come give us a minute or two. Open the box up, we giving you tools. Giving your engine the fuel that it needs. Breathing into it, it's autoimmune. Make a connection, we're stronger in two. Making us one of a kind of a few. Work on the mind, but show me your moves. If you do what you say, you know what to do. Yeah.
Simply walk the talk.